Hello, Lindsay. Hi, Kayla. It is so great to be in this space with you.
I am really excited for our conversation today. We are definitely going to dive into one of my favorite topics, which is the load that entrepreneurial women carry. I don't think a lot of people are thinking about it, to be honest with you.
No, and I wasn't even thinking about the entrepreneurial load until I became a parent. It was just that I'd worked for people who were self-employed, and then I made the transition into self-employment when my kid was about 2 because I didn't want to sustain it, and I couldn't sustain the typical work week.
Yeah. Oh, completely. I actually had been an entrepreneur since I was 23. And so I had been running my own show and like working a lot, working nights and weekends. And I just remember having this infinite flexibility. And then when I had my first child, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. The pace that I was running at was totally unsustainable. And all of the work and all of the like stuff I was managing at home and just like everything came crashing down on my head. And that was when my husband and I realized we had a problem in our household with the division of labor. It was the first time that we basically sat down and like project planned our family.
Yes. Yes, and it is so incredibly important to be having these communications, to lean into them because these gaps, like for us it was like this big, it was a communication gap, it was a time gap, it was all the things. I'm married to a shift worker, so there's like some non-negotiables in that, right? Like when he is at work, he is at work. I almost can't even text him or call him. Like I know not to expect a response for 12 hours.
Right.
And so when you're carrying the majority of that division of labor, and then still working within the gender constraints and the patriarchy and all the things, it's, I actually found it almost impossible to succeed within that framework.
It is so impossible. And like as a working mom, like let's just even take entrepreneurship off the table of like running your own business, running your own show. Just as a working mom, and we all know that the default caretaker in most families is typically the woman. And that's just a burden in and of itself. And then when you add on the burden of entrepreneurship, which is just so much more, like you have to worry about so much more, wear so many more hats when you're an entrepreneur running your own show, like that load just gets so incredibly heavy. And I think we have this like superwoman mentality of like, I should be able to handle this. I can do this. Like, I can take this on. I'm a boss babe, which I hate, by the way. But like, it's just like, oh yeah, like I can do this. I'm just gonna grit my teeth and like get through it. It's so unhealthy. Like we
Yes.
all reach burnout. Like I think I don't know if you ever did. Did you ever have a point of burnout? Because I sure shit did.
Oh yes. Yes. There was a few points. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 6 years, a working mom for 8, a working human since I was
Yes.
14. And the 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 pressure that leads to the burnout, because I don't view burnout as the problem, right? That's not the problem. The human is not the problem, the burnout is not the problem. It's the pressure and the way that we approach the pressure that can have the biggest weight, right? Because burnout for me came from, okay, expectation of, and just the reality of being raised by a very strong single female parent who worked in the workforce my entire life, like 3 months. I was at a home daycare. And so she had to, like, there was certain non-negotiables around that. And that's what I seen. I seen a female doing everything on her own with her own resilience and her own stuff. And so then I'm in a partnership with 2 children, and I'm like, I don't think I can sustain this like traditional 8 to 5. And even if even as an entrepreneur, I don't work 8 to 5 because I can't sustain it. Wouldn't matter if I had entrepreneurial or a real job.
Right, right. A traditional employment or like
Yes.
hourly work or yeah.
Yes.
Um, did you see, like, in the pandemic, a lot of people around you, or women in particular, becoming entrepreneurs?
Oh,
Because I
uh-huh.
feel like, yeah, I feel like it was like this era of like women who were in the traditional workforce, kicking ass, taking names, and with COVID hitting, it was just like they all had to just someone,
Mhm.
it was either parent, one of them
Someone.
had to just be home. And unfortunately, the woman what typically was the one that like took on that task of being the stay-at-home parent. And I think that so many of these women were like looking to still use their skills, use their brains
Mhm.
because they're so used to that in their corporate careers or whatever they were doing. And they just started freelancing. They started taking on like side hustles or starting companies. And so I really feel like we have this like entrepreneurial workforce of women who became forced entrepreneurs or like accidental entrepreneurs during
Accidental.
COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. I also knew a very large portion of women in my community and in my client base who not only took on the role of being at home with the children, they also continued to work. And their
Oh,
partner
yes.
either also continued to work at home, but it was undisturbed. It was more undisturbed, and or that partner was the person to go to work.
It almost feels like this where both parents were now at home with their children. It was this insight and this like this light was shown on how intense the mental load and invisible labor is, because I feel like traditionally and also like stereotypically like men were outside of the house, like they didn't really see everything that was going on. And having everyone forced to be home all the time, it was this like holy shit moment of everyone is like, oh whoa, this is what has to be done to take care of everything. This is bananas. Like, so there are women breaking because they were like taking on too much. And then I also think men just had no idea, and they were
Yes.
just home all the time and were seeing everything that was involved. And so
Yeah.
I do feel like we're coming out of COVID and everyone is kind of like, all right, so like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
I know that was a huge motivation for me to take the Fair Play Facilitator training, was because I see it so much in the entrepreneurial space is that women, especially these women who became entrepreneurs during COVID, it's like there's still this imbalance where because they're entrepreneurs, they have the time flexibility. And so if something goes wrong, like a kid gets sick at school or like there's something that emergency needs to happen, they're automatically like the glitch in the matrix person. They're automatically the person who has to go deal with the problem. So they're like the family's professional firefighter, which I feel like just isn't fair.
Yeah. And how do you find working within that? Like, because we're working within the system currently that is set up in such a way that in the majority of cases or research would show that the woman is the one to take on the glitch in the matrix, and sometimes not even based on an agreement. It was just like, your name is first on the daycare, your name is first on the
Right.
school, your name is first on all of those pieces of contact. And I have a friend who's like, call their dad, like their dad is literally first contact. And even by default, the people who have the form in front of them, who know that mom doesn't want to be called, still call the mom because that's the system we live in.
Totally. And we have to be so cognizant of it where like if you're filling out those forms and you want the dad to be called first, it's like you have to put the dad first on everything. And I feel like you also almost have to put like a little asterisk, which is like, yes, call the dad first.
Yes. I am in agreement with you calling him first.
Exactly. Like we're in that boat as a family because my husband is he's the stay-at-home dad, and like he is the one that like they got to call first because I travel for work sometimes. And so it's like, if you're calling me, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm
Yeah.
really sorry. Like, you got to call him first. And I think everyone has finally got on board with that. But I do remember there was a time where I was the first contact and it was like, I'm not in town. So, like, you got to call Andrew. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And like the just the like the metaphorical and the physical weight of carrying the majority of that, the division of labor, the mental load, the second shift, whatever you want to call it, is in particularly unique as an entrepreneur because of this myth that we as entrepreneurs, I self-identify as that, have more time flexibility because you work
Exactly.
for yourself. You have more choice. You have more this and that. And how does that show up for you?
I think that it's like, I think it depends on like what type of work you're doing too. So, like, I personally, a lot of my work is appointments, and I think yours is too. Like, we're
Mhm.
with clients. I think that that's a lot easier to understand for our significant other. It's like, I'm in session, or I'm in a coaching call, or I'm on a Zoom. Like, that's a concrete thing that they can understand. I think the people I've talked to that really struggle with this the most is when the work that they're doing isn't concrete. It's not like in an appointment. So
Yeah.
it's like they're doing like, let's just take like a graphic designer, for example. They have creative work that they can literally be working on at 9 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night. As long as they meet that client deadline, it doesn't really matter. But maybe their creative juices are more on point first thing in the morning. So to them, to have something come up or something emergency status at like 10:30 in the morning when they're like reaching peak creativity, that's so disruptive to their day. And
Yes.
so it's not this thing you can really communicate to your partner so easily and hold that boundary of no, from 9 to 11 every single day that I'm working, that's my creative time. So if something comes up that needs to be dealt with, I need you to be there and available to deal with it. And so there is this piece of you have to have this intrinsic worth and know that we both learned time is equal. Doesn't matter if you're in a meeting
Yes.
with somebody or if you're doing your creative time or you're doing something to nurture yourself, like your time is valuable. And so I think that's actually the challenge I've seen with my entrepreneur friends and clients is that they feel guilty about holding those boundaries, and if they're not with a client or in an appointment, they are willing to have that flexibility with their significant other or whatever. But it's like, you have to hold on to your boundary. Like, you, if that is important to you as a professional and to your career, it's important to communicate it and hold it. So that's the challenge I'm seeing with a lot of people is it's like, well, I guess I can like do this, or I guess I can do the laundry, even though I really, this is my best time to be creative or whatever. So it's that guilt of feeling that their time isn't valuable or that the
Mhm.
time that they're working can be interrupted because it's not technically with clients or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see the same theme amongst mothers and also just their off time, like their permission
Totally.
to be unavailable, their permission to be interesting. And so this myth around like being self-employed and choice and time flexibility and all those things is it can also be applied to like that personal time. You as a human being wanting to pursue something and well, I could not go this week, or I could put it off till next week, or oh, well, pottery's a time consuming hobby. And I don't know that we can't afford that time in our current division of labor or relationship. And I think that same thing can be applied there. And so it's that the biggest thing that I took away from the Fair Play Facilitator training was that permission to be
Mhm.
unavailable, the permission to still be interesting because even outside of our entrepreneurial and our mom hats, we also still have an entire personality that needs to be nurtured so that we can have those creative juices flowing at work and as a parent.
100%. I think that women and entrepreneurial women, it's like we just struggle with putting ourselves at the top of the list because there are so many hats that we wear. And so
Mhm.
I know for me personally, it's like I have people that work for me and like those people are really important to me. Like not only do I care about them as people, but it's like they're part of my livelihood. So it's like I do have
Yes.
to put them first a lot of times. So it's like I have my employees that I have to take care of and put first. I have my family that I have to take care of and put first. And so it is so easy to just put yourself last. So, like, one of the things that I have done is I just prioritize me time. That's the first thing I throw into my schedule every single week. It's like I throw in the things that I know are important for me. And those are, again, non negotiables. Like, you have to hold hard boundaries with them. Do things happen? Sure, of course. But, like, more often than not, I'm sticking to those boundaries of like, I'm going to yoga twice a week. I am going to go for a walk. I will read my book in my hammock. Like whatever is on my list for that week of things that are going to just give me space to be myself or enjoy my life on my own as Lindsay. Like those are so important. And like we totally lose sight of it. Like we totally lose sight of those things that like fill you up and make you happy. So I'm curious, what do you do to prioritize you time?
Um, I have to put it in the calendar, it doesn't happen.
Same.
And so for me, it doesn't have to be at a particular time of day or, a Wednesday per se. The thing that makes me feel alive and most like myself is expressing myself through art and creativity. And so as an expressive arts therapist, like it's non-negotiable for me to be able to show it for my clients in that way if I'm not practicing it also. And so I have like a creative art journal practice. I paint. I collage here, like in my office between sessions sometimes. And so it's not necessarily more of like a thing on my checklist that I have to do. It's just more tuning in and listening to when I have the urge because it's not like weeks go by and I don't have the urge. I've not listened to
Right.
it. I've not done it. And so it's being really accountable to myself and in tune with what I need. And here's when I know it's not happening. When I'm snippy with my kids, when I'm
Mhm.
starting to build resentment for my husband, when the narrative comes in of like, well, what did you do all day? That's when I haven't done the things that I need because it's not actually about what he did during the day. Sure, maybe we had a miscommunication. He's shift worker, so he's home sometimes Monday to Friday and like doing all the domestic stuff.
Yep.
And sometimes it's a miscommunication, like we needed groceries, the card pass off situation sometimes doesn't happen for us. Um, but it's that narrative. When the narrative comes in of I feel resentful of all of the time you get, I'm not giving myself permission for that time because it's really not about him. It's
That
about me.
yes, that shows up for me too, and I think that that's such a good warning sign when you start to recognize you're having those resentful thoughts in your head. I mean, hopefully you're not saying them out loud, but I mean, I am a human and I have said them out loud, and that's when you know it really, really is a
That's that is
problem.
that's like
Yeah. Oh, so
yeah.
I I also think like when I'm super busy, and I'm wondering if you struggle with this too, is that like I just like ignore those thoughts. Like I don't even realize I'm having them. And like,
Mm.
so what are your tips and tricks for like slowing it down and like checking in with yourself and realizing that like things are not okay? Like, do you have any things that work for
Mm.
you?
This is like it's pretty trivial, but it is the one that's coming to my mind
Yeah.
is going to the bathroom without my phone.
Oh, I actually
And
like that.
and so I will intentionally on purpose during my workday or at home, I will, and it's actually become a bit of a practice where I don't normally take my phone to the bathroom anymore,
Mhm.
because I don't need it as that escape. Because
Yeah.
when I'm actually tuning into my body and understanding what I need, I can say, okay, I need 10 minutes to be creative today, or I need, maybe it's an hour. It's sometimes 10 minutes will do it. Um, so I will go to the bathroom without my phone, and I will close my eyes, and I will intentionally like sit there and breathe because I'm already sitting there
Mhm.
and alone. So it's an easy habit stacker for me to check in.
That's so cool. I've never heard that. So, I mean, yeah, to you, it might be simple and kind of like rudimentary, but like, I think that's such a great hack, especially because you got to go to the bathroom.
You do,
Everyone
and
goes to
like
the
several
bathroom.
times a day. So
Right. So it's like your little check in to like be like,
it
oh, how am
is.
I doing? I personally set a 1 minute timer on my phone and just close my eyes and breathe and like ask myself, what am I feeling? And
Mm,
I feel like just doing that is super great to just like bring awareness to how you're feeling because I used to be really, really horrible at it. And so now it's like, okay, like I'm breathing, like what am I feeling? And it inevitably like always comes up, like what you
mhm.
need to know. And so it really is just again going back to like spending time with yourself is so
Yeah,
important.
it's so important, and like both of us have just outlined, it's 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Like it's for me, the check-in, and I know because I've heard this from some of my clients, like, "I don't have time," or "How long does it take? How long will I have to sit there until I know?" Totally, those questions matter. But in reality, when we get down to the nitty-gritties of it, it's like, it's 60 seconds. You could, you know, I've done it in between pickups. I've done it from that little vacation of getting one kid buckled in, checking in with myself, walking
Yes.
around the car, getting the other one buckled in. Like it's it is a practice, and I think there is a misconception out there that these things just come naturally to other people and not to me. Like the narrative can be like, well, I
Right.
don't have access to that, or I wouldn't have time for that. And once you get down to the nitty-gritties of it, I think most people could be afforded 60 seconds in the day to check in with how they're feeling. And I would add to that that if a person, even right now as you're listening to this, you are listening to this and you think to yourself, I don't even have 60 seconds, I don't have a 1 minute, I don't have 2 minutes, we got to have a conversation.
I know. Turn off
Like
this podcast right now
right
and just
now.
set a timer for 1 minute and just sit there, close your eyes, and breathe. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
That's it. And then it starts to feel really good. And you're like, ooh,
Yes.
maybe I can do 2 minutes. Maybe I can do three. Maybe I'll go back to one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found I do it between appointments too, because I'm on Zooms a lot. And I do find that like just having it is almost like a cleansing space, like to just kind of like shed whatever you were just doing, getting yourself centered, grounded, like onto the next thing. Um, so I know that as moms, entrepreneurs, like you're always, it's always like a go, go, go mentality, but like really taking the time to just slow down, I think is just so crucial.
Yeah. It's crucial, and it's like it's a little rebellious. And so for anybody who like loves or lost a little bit of that rebellious spirit as you became a
Hmm.
parent, I think going against the grain of what is normal and expected is a bit of that like hustle, always busy, this like glorification of being busy, like if a
Yeah.
friend of yours came over and she didn't immediately tell you 10 different ways that her life was going wrong, and she just said, oh, things are fine, I'm like connected to my feelings, and my partner and I've worked out the division of labor, and responsive parenting is going great, you would be like, fuck did you come over here for?
I know. Get out of my
Right.
life. I don't even wanna talk to you right now.
Yeah. And so we glorify being busy because, on a subtle level, it protects us and it keeps us safe from certain things. And in the pandemic, a lot of my clients were just like, some of them were thriving because of the built-in
Mhm.
boundaries of not being able to see family, to not have to drop off and see that toxic mom in the school pickup line, or be asked to make cookies for the bake sale and you would have to be forced to, enter into your people pleasing, or, oh, I don't want to, I maybe should, can I buy them at the store? Do they have to be handmade? Like, all of that disappeared. And there were these
Mhm.
built-in boundaries. And then as things have progressed over the last 3 years, a lot of my clients who I've had the privilege of having a 3 to 5 year relationship with are back in that place again,
Yes.
because they struggle, they really internally struggle with boundaries and the hustle and the expectations, the division of labor. I should, they shouldn't. Like,
Yeah, signing kids up back for activities, like packing your schedule, like we all do that to ourselves. Like that is 100% self-inflicted. And so I know that we have this really beautiful gift coming out of COVID, which was like you got to rebuild your life intentionally
mm,
and like be like, all right, what are we inviting back into the fold? And I don't know that everyone took advantage of that because I think so many people were like, oh, yes, back kids, back to basketball, back to
yeah.
dance class, back to this, back to that. And slowing down is just so necessary. So, I mean, whether it's just taking time for yourself to do something you love or just like taking a pause for a minute, like that's a gift to yourself and it's space that we all need as humans.
Mhm. And to remember, I think it's really important to remember your humanity, especially when you are in a position of maybe questioning who you are, what your worth is. Some people are asking themselves some really big questions like, who
Hmm.
am I? Who are you? Do I want to spend the rest of my life with you? Who are my children? How am I showing up for them? Like, these are not small questions. And I think it's really important, to kind of summarize what Lindsay and I have shared with you today is there is power in pausing. There is power in stillness. And if you're seeing it as a chore or something that you have to add to your list, like, oh yeah, great. Now Kayla and Lindsay are telling me I have to add a
Yeah.
moment of silence to my list today. Great. Um, it's more like an invitation to be curious about the way you feel, the way you're showing up, and is that really in alignment with how you want to continue to show up?
Yeah. And since we're talking about entrepreneurship, like you don't have a boss, like you are your boss. And so you have choice. Like there might be consequences for certain choices,
Mhm.
but if you want to take one less client, yes, you might be getting less money, but like maybe that doesn't mean that much if you get an hour back in your day to go ride a bike, go swimming, like journal, read a book. So it isn't all about that hustle, productivity culture. It's about as an entrepreneur, you are so lucky because you get to craft your schedule. Whether you think you do or not, you absolutely have ultimate control over your schedule and your life. It's just how you're taking advantage of that. And so that's personally why I love being an entrepreneur is like I have a choice. And like,
Mhm.
yes, choices have pros and cons, but like we have choice. Whereas if we're working for somebody else, you don't have choice. You have to ask for time off. You have to ask for, is this a good time for me to take my lunch? You have to be at an office if you're working in an office from certain hours. And so I personally think being an entrepreneur is such a gift. And it's a double edged sword, of course, because ultimate freedom is really difficult. But like we forget that we actually have a choice.
Yes. And you know what? I even think that that's applicable to certain work environments,
Hmm.
because there is some choice in where you work, how you work, what your schedule is. I think the options would be, it's like the game of life, right? Like
Yes.
when you choose the college path, you get three options. When you choose the I'm just going to work path, you get one option. And so It's like for those who have chosen to, if you happen to be listening and you're not an entrepreneur, you just enjoyed the conversation. I think it's important to still believe in a lot of facets in your life that you have choice.
I definitely think that it's important to open your mind to you have choice for sure. And like there are some people that are like, well, my employer's requiring me to come into the office 5 days a week. It's like, okay, but you may have choice. Like you
Mhm.
don't know until you ask. And I think that that's some of the things that like there is this negotiation going on, whether it's with yourself as an entrepreneur or it's you with your employer. Like you aren't always stuck in just one way of doing things. And there definitely is this like creativity and being an advocate for yourself that
Mhm.
has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this was amazing.
It was.
Thank you so much. This is such a good conversation. We're both fair play facilitators.
We
So
are.
if you want to learn more about fair play, I definitely recommend you check it out. It is the best. I also think it just is so applicable to people who run their own business because we're all about systems and organization and making things efficient. And so I personally feel like fair play is basically like systematizing your house. Like Eve Rodsky even says it's your home is your most important organization. And so I really think the fair play system lends itself extremely well to entrepreneurs because you're already used to running your own show. And so now we're just applying all those things you're so great at to your house.
100%. 100%. Thank you so much for listening today and being here and sharing space with us today.